probably live. Let me mute the tab here. Scoot some things around. What is up, Facebook? Thank you for joining.
Hi, Facebook.
We are getting situated. I'm here with Rev Tank, 85 names of Sam. He says he's got 85 names. I know it's not 85 names of Sam, although we should just call you 85 names of Sam and just knock it all out with one.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about right there. See? That's awesome.
We are going through the Diamond Sutra, guys. And actually, I guess I'm going through it. Sam's helping me go through it, and we are sharing that dialogue with you. And from my perspective, it's to share anything out there that maybe somebody else may be looking at. Martin Brosman, what is going on, brother? In my perspective, it is in hopes that if you have had questions about Buddhism before and have been too afraid to ask, didn't have somebody to ask, maybe the internet didn't give you quite the answer you were looking for, or the depth of the answer you were looking for as it related to Buddhism. And I am lucky enough to be acquainted with dear Sam here, who is a true reverend of Buddhism, Mahayana, right?
Mahayana, Sam? Yeah, lay Buddhism, yeah.
Mahayana Buddhism. So,
Tantric Buddhism, yeah.
I'm lucky enough to know him, through the Facebooks, and actually in reality, he lives right down the road. And it's always great when you can talk to someone you know, like, and trust about something that you're interested in, especially if they are they have in-depth knowledge on it, and they're able to articulate it back to you, and work with you as you are. We'll just call it seeking, shall we, Sam? So I have been somewhat interested in Buddhism over the years, and we are working through the Diamond Sutra because it is the one that gave enlightenment to the sixth Zen patriarch of Buddhism. And if you're not familiar with Zen Buddhism, it is also of the, that's right, still Mahayana, but more like indigenous to Japan. Correct me if I'm
it's more Eastern. It's further Eastern.
Okay, so that is kind of where we're at. We have gone through, and I will share the link right now with you all. We're using a translation of the Diamond Sutra. There's many of them, and as Sam will tell you that, dependent on which one that you go ahead and look at, you are going to have there's going to be different interpretations. When somebody goes through and does their translation, it's going to be translated not only according to that person in interpretation of how to translate a certain word, but also their interpretation of the Buddhism, how would you say it? Buddhistic message that's trying to be put across. Is that right?
I would say that. Yeah, that would be the message of the enlightened one is probably about the best way you could get so, because Buddha did not, the eternal Buddha, Shakyamuni did not claim ever to create the universe. He just simply said he understood how it worked, and that's all that's basically what the disclaimer is. I did not create the universe. I just know how it seems to be working. So that's the basic take on it. So
okay, and so where we are today, we're going through it, and we're going to hit chapters 5 and 6. And thus far, we are aware of the community and the surroundings of where the questions are being asked, and the question that's being posed to the Buddha, and the where and how it's being asked is important because we take refuge in the Sangha, which is the community, right, Sam? So, and then the question that's kind of being asked is like, how do we keep our kids, or how do we keep our future, selves, I guess, as it were, and our children? How do we teach them to be the clearest of mind and whatnot? Not too much. I did a 10-day noble sit a year ago with a drama each night. Learned a lot about meditations. Was intense. It was Vastamana meditation. Enjoying the chat. Thanks for joining us, Martin. Happy to see you here. Absolutely.
Hi, Martin.
So we did we did the first few chapters, taking refuge in the Sangha, which is the community. We have the question, which is basically how do we keep our kids and teach our children and those in the community to like stay wise and become wise and just have like, be clear in thought and wisdom. And then, that's the question that's being posed to the Buddha. And the Buddha's like, you've looked everywhere you can. You've overturned like every angle. You've looked at it in any way you can, because if you have, that's great. But if you haven't, and you're going to accept my answer, you need to be able to execute on it and pay attention. And he begins to give the answers to the questions. He begins to teach. He doesn't necessarily give, I guess, right. He's giving his response, I guess is the best terminology, right, Sam?
Yeah, it's basically what it boils down to. This is the appropriate information given to me based off of the circumstances you put in front of me.
Okay. So then he goes ahead and he starts giving the information, and thus far we've learned that detach yourself from expectations, and then also kind of detach yourself, not go out and do good, kind deeds and be compassionate and giving to everybody, and not because you look good doing it, but because it's what you should be doing. And again, don't attach any expectations to that. And that's kind of where we are. Sorry to, I don't know how else to build up to it. This isn't something that I run around and do often. So that's about where we are though. Right, Sam?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything I've left out up to this point, you think?
No.
Okay. Awesome. And I want to say thanks again for Sam to, Rev Tank times 85 for joining us today. And just helping through this, because it is really cool and very interesting to me as well. So let me just share. I'll share the screen of the chapter. Well, it's currently on chapter 6, but I'm going to rewind us back to chapter 5, which is very actually short. So I'm going to share the screen with that. Go back to chapter 5. And we're gonna tackle it, man. So it goes Subhuti, who is the monk who's asking the question, goes Subhuti, and this is the Buddha speaking. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the Buddha be recognized by means of his bodily form? No, most honored one. The Buddha cannot be recognized by means of his bodily form. Why? Because when the Buddha speaks of bodily form, it is not a real form, but only an illusion. The Buddha then spoke to Subhuti. All that has a form is elusive and unreal. When you see that all forms are elusive and unreal, then you will begin to perceive your true Buddha nature. At kind of a first glance, it's like, all right, well, Buddha, I think in this context, means an enlightened one. Is that correct, Sam?
That is correct.
So what Buddha is asking is, can you recognize an enlightened one simply by their physical bodily form? Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So because when the Buddha speaks of bodily form, it is not a real form, but only an illusion. All that has form is elusive and unreal. When you see that all forms are elusive and unreal, then you'll begin to perceive your true Buddha nature. I'm going to take a stab at this and just say that all that has a form is elusive and unreal is that, to me, immediate interpretation, even with just thinking about it a little bit, is that because all the things that we see around us are created in our own minds. And that is why it is elusive and unreal. And then when we realize that everything that is around us is created within, that is within our minds, then that is where we begin to see our true Buddha nature. But I'm sure I feel like there's more to that.
It is based off of it. It is this. Okay, there is, but it is not. It is not to say that basically what that boils down to is truth ultimately has no form. And what that means is that what it basically means is that the actual truth that you are quote unquote seeking, the actual 100% no BS, this is the proof in front of me that you are seeking, is going to be there. But do not have an expectation on what you discover at that point, whatever your brain translates it into. People translated Shakyamuni into the actual eternal Buddha. They believe that's who he was. It's not just necessarily that form. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
The message, okay, the best way that I can explain it is that if you research into the Bible says that Jesus said that it matters not the messenger, but the message itself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And what that basically is telling you is that at the end of the day, it does not matter where the message absolutely comes from. If it is true and it is concise, it's conclusive, it is the actual truth itself, then that is what is going to be in front of you. If you have an expectation of it, then your expectation has you clinging to attachment, and you can't see it for everything that it is. Gotcha.
Okay.
It's the universal understanding of acceptance. It goes back to the eightfolded path of Hinayana process called the right view.
The right view. Right.
The right view. Yes.
Yes, and still, you did the best thing with the cups. You showed me the right view using the cups, which was still
right.
Very, very, very well done.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you can get the Buddha message, and it doesn't have to necessarily come from that specific person.
Exactly.
Right? Okay. So, I mean, look, that was really cool. Chapter 5 was kind of easy breezy, guys.
Right.
But we're going to jump over to, I'll share it again. We're going to go over to chapter 6, and, I will read it just simply because I don't have it committed to memory, and you probably don't either.
No.
Right. So
why don't you remember that? It's called detachment.
Right. Chapter 6. Subhuti respectfully asked the Lord Buddha, most honored one, in the future, if a person hears this teaching, even if it's only a phrase or sentence, is it possible that that person to have true faith and knowledge of enlightenment awaken in their mind? Buddha responds without a doubt, Subhuti, even 500 years after the enlightenment of this Buddha, there will be some who are virtuous and wise, and while practicing compassion and charity, will believe in the words and phrases of the sutra, and will awaken their minds purely. After they come to hear these teachings, they will be inspired with belief. This is because when some hear these words, they will have understood intuitively that these words are the truth. Hence, the message, right, that you're talking about. But you must also remember, Subhuti, that such persons have long ago planted the seeds of goodness and merit that led to this realization. They planted the seeds of good deeds and charity, not simply before one Buddhist temple or 2 temples or 5, but before hundreds of thousands of Buddhas and temples. So when a person who hears the words and phrases of this sutra is ready for it to happen, a pure faith and clarity can awaken within their minds. Subhuti, anyone who awakens faith upon hearing the words and phrases of this sutra will accumulate countless blessings and merits. How do I know this? Because this person must have discarded all arbitrary notions of the existence of personal self and other people, or of a universal self. Otherwise, their minds would still grasp after such relative conceptions. Furthermore, these people must have already discarded all arbitrary notions of the non-existence of a personal self, other people, or a universal self. Otherwise, their minds will still be grasping at such notions. Therefore, anyone who seeks total enlightenment should discard not only conceptions of their own selfhood, of other selves, or of a universal self, but they should also discard all notions of the non-existence of such concepts. Come on, Buddha, give us an easy answer. When the Buddha explains these things, when the Buddha explains things using such concepts and ideas, people should remember the unreality of such concepts and ideas. They should recall that in teaching spiritual truths, the Buddha always uses concepts and ideas in a way that a raft is used to cross a river. Once the river has been crossed over, the raft is no more use and should be discarded. These arbitrary concepts and ideas about spiritual things need to be explained to us as we seek to attain enlightenment. However, ultimately, these arbitrary conceptions can be discarded. Think, Subhuti, isn't it more obvious that we should also give up our conception of non-existent things? Does this tie into, the previous chapter, just that everything's already kind of within our own minds anyways, and what we're seeing is reality that we're creating?
Right.
Well, it can't be that simple.
Well, it is, but law of innumerable meanings applies at this point.
Why don't you
And
tell us what that is real quick?
okay, the law of innumerable meanings. I think I went over at one point with other with a I can't remember. I went over at one point, but law of innumerable meanings means that you are it is it's a concept that means the one thing can mean many things, basically.
Okay. Right.
And you are seeing the reality you are creating. Everybody must understand that when the Buddha spoke that, he also spoke that of, and I'm just using it in formal context, you know what I mean? Not necessarily that was what it was, but this is the interpretation of it. That means that the eternal Buddha basically said at this point, the closest way I can, if it makes any sense, I can translate it in my brain to give it to you, is when the message truly comes, when true understanding is actually met, when your eyes is right in front of the truth at that point, you're seeing the reality you're creating. Your brain is translating and putting into visual effects based off what your eyes are getting, right? It's called it's the shifts of existence, and it also is it's also the beginning of ascension into true understanding and acceptance. This is where a mastery comes into play about your mind at that point. Are you ready to see how crazy this will go? And then you go, okay, yes, I am. And then he goes, you're seeing the reality you're creating. And the reason why is because the reality that you are creating are like ripples. And those ripples are going out everywhere. It's like the pebble thing. When you take a pebble and you put it into the river and you forever change it, that small changes, they begin to build. When those begin to build, you're following that ripple. And when you want to follow that ripple, you want to see where it goes. And then it's the end of it. That's the concept of it. You are using the raft to let the raft actually float you across passively, unless you're rowing or making changes in the water at that point. Mm-hmm. And that's why when it gets there, you need to let that go, because the only reason why you would need that raft again is if either A, you are afraid of what's coming up in front of you, or B, you're about ready to go back. You see what I'm saying? Right. So that's your attachment at that point. You need to let that go. Once I'm done telling you this at this point, regardless of what form it is in, you discard the form and you understand the message. And then from there, that's when you begin to step forward and begin to start creating your own enlightenment at that point. If you don't like the world that you are dealing with, understand you are seeing the reality you are creating. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you can't understand what's going on, why is this reality something I'm creating? Well, look at your actions. You can lie to yourself and say, I did nothing wrong. You can, this is where you have to take responsibility for what you truly did do. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Right. It boils down to self-accountability, self-understanding. And the reason being is because if you start trying to apply a principle that universally works if you are honest, if you try to deceive the number, if you try to fudge the numbers in it, the equation's they're gonna never give you the right answer. You know what I mean? Right. You can't play with you can't just pick and choose what facts you want to understand. You have to understand them all. Whether you agree with them or not, your feelings aside from it.
That's interesting. No, so I mean, that's it. That I'm digesting that one.
But does it make sense though?
Yes, but I feel like I'm missing a piece, right? So
I'm
trying to figure out what that piece is that I'm not quite getting. But it sounds to me like when we're talking about all the actions, that this is where you must also remember, Subhuti, that such persons have long ago planted the seeds of goodness and merit that lead to this realization. And this, I guess, talks a little bit to what you're saying here. Like they have planted the seeds of good deeds and charity, not simply before one Buddhist temple or two temples or 500, but before hundreds of thousands. And this is just kind of talking about your laws of numbers or like interpretations, right?
Right.
But it also speaks to they have recognized their actions as being good up until this point. You know, they had done the work that you're talking about. Is that what you're saying? Is that what
basically?
That is
yeah, exactly. The people who are going to give this message, like whatever it is, they're going to also speak it. They're going to also do it. It means that leaders are accountable for their thing. And if you choose to be a leader, that means you also must be a good follower, which means that you must be someone who is consistent, someone who is honest, who is forward. You don't have to be perfect, but you have to, if you are taking that role as a leadership, you begin to accept the responsibility that comes with that quote unquote authority. And that's why he says hundreds of thousands of temples. a temple at that point is symbolic to whatever means is actually there. Like my house is my sanctuary. You see what I'm saying? My house is my sanctuary. My home is my sanctuary. This is where I live at, and this is where, I live at. And Buddhism is meant to be a personal thing. It's meant to be your own personal, honest understanding of yourself and the world around you, regardless of what direction there is. And that is the reason why I tell people, everybody who deals in Buddhism, who studies Buddhism, who is learning about Buddhism, we're not going to come to the same exact answer because everybody is different. The only reason why anybody would come to the same conclusions, you know what I'm saying? We'll come to the same conclusion, but we will still see two different truths because we're two different people.
I like that line right there. So same conclusion, two different truths. And that makes sense too, right? That does make sense. Is that so? Let's keep going because I got another question. Let me write that down for later. Contention. All right. So, any person who awakens faith upon hearing these words or phrases of the sutra will accumulate countless blessings and merit. So that this means that they realize more of their inner selves. Is this saying that they're going to accept leadership? Or is it just saying that what is this saying? So any person, how do I know this? Because a person must have discarded all arbitrary notions of existence of personal self, of other people, or of a universal self. Otherwise, they're just,
in other words, they're just doing it. You will know who they are because they're just doing it. You will see them putting it into action. It's like this. It's like, okay, for example, I'm somebody who writes books on how to improve yourself, right? And I'm putting all these books, and all these people go read these books, right? And they read these books cover to cover, they study them, they analyze them, they break them down, they do blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? They put these things in their lives, and this is what they do, right? So then they come back because they have questions because the parameters have now changed in their life, and they're like, okay, well, now what do we do about this and interpret this because we tried to apply this and this did not work, right? Basically what that is that, okay, if you are attempting an equation, if you're attempting to do better and build people and stuff, and you start investing into your community, the results are going to prove themselves. That's basically what they said at that point. Okay. Buddhism, the Tantric Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, is the understanding that once something is applied, if it is applied in earnest and honest, which is the reason why the 6 perfections are the way they are, it's donation with wisdom. Is basically known as generosity. A donation with wisdom is putting your effort, your time, your places, and putting your effort, your time, and your places into yourself, putting it forward, but doing it in the most effective and honest way possible is what it is. Effective being, okay, instead of giving homeless people money, you buy them food. You see what I'm saying? If that's all you can do, you buy them a meal. Right. And then you see what I'm saying? That's effective because then at that point, if they're truly hungry and if they're truly homeless or what have you, beggars are not going to be choosers. They will take what kindness is given to them. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
But if you see that person jump into a car and go, you then know that person is dishonest and you forgive them because their karma is going to come get them, but you don't forget. So the next time you see them, you're a little bit more watchful. You see what I'm saying? You're showing that while I am kind, I'm not there to be taken advantage of. Okay. And that is the understanding of with Buddhism. Buddhism is because you're secure in your understanding that what you have, you don't live your life in fear. You know what I mean? You don't live with expectations of things. You don't live with those struggles. And when you do have those struggles, you deal with them and you take them and you make yourself better. You don't let them defeat you. You see what I'm saying? The concept of the lotus.
I don't know the concept of the lotus.
The lotus flower that blooms in all of the murky, all of those murky, dirty waters and everything else. They bloom up, and when they bloom, they're beautiful flowers. Okay, it's that concept. They grow in very muddy, murky. They grow in some very bad conditions, and they survive.
Are you saying it's like a pretty thing in a shitty area?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you make the best out of what you have in front of you.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So, And just kind of digging at the words here, right? That's in here.
Right.
Therefore, anyone who seeks total enlightenment should discard not only conceptions of their own selfhood or other selves, or of a universal self, but they should also discard all notions of the non-existence of such concepts. Explain, Lucy. I don't even know where to go with that.
Okay. 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 I'm gonna break that part down for you real quick, okay? Because I know exactly what you're looking at, but let me take a look real quick, okay? And I should have it here.
Do you want me to post it up?
Oh no, I got it real quick, okay. And you are where are we at now?
Chapter 6.
Okay, yeah, because I'm gonna take a look right there because I want to make sure that when you say, okay, now. The arbitrary kind of ideas of spirits need to be explained with sequel alignment. Arbitrary concepts can be discarded. Right. In the concepts of non-existent things. Yeah. Okay. Now, now question is that, so I know where you're at. What part of that do you have a question with? Specifically?
Well, I mean, anyone who seeks total should discard not only conceptions of their own selfhood or other selves or of a universal self. What's being said there? Because I'm not really getting a tight grasp on that one.
Okay. This comes down to the point where the understanding, the arbitrary is, it depends on your definition of the use of the word. By here, because it is symbolic, again, Buddhism is symbolic and it uses certain words specifically on purpose, and those words don't always translate, and they go back to the nearest word that they can possibly get translated to, which is why the transcription is there. This is where they use the word that they specifically knew that people could actually identify and come to, so it would actually be form at that point.
Right.
So then if I have to say with my knowledge of the word arbitrary, I would have to say that specific part right there tells me that they have discarded all other. It is going back to another platform of the understanding behind doing what is right, irregardless.
Okay.
And what that boils down to is that it's you actually at that point emphasizing and putting forward that action specifically within the environment that you're in. That is more so, okay, I got it. This is a bad area, but I'm going to make the most of it. And part of that is beginning to invest back into your sangha. That means actually beginning to pull back everything into you. And what the arbitrary notions is basically those people who are looking at it, outsiders. It's like, don't be concerned with what they think. Mm-hmm. If you're doing the right thing, the results will prove itself. You see what I'm saying? The results will, at the end of the day, if this is the right thing you're doing, then, and you harm no one, you're harming no one, and you're doing it and you're going forward with it, then at this point, the arbitrary notions, people who are in whatever it is that around you, they will have to see for themselves. They have to interpret for themselves if that is something that, if that's their correct understanding of you. You see what I'm saying? At one point, it's in your actions, and then it's also an emphasis on the understanding of the Hinayana once again, and that's also right effort. Because in the beginning, and in the right effort, it means if you're of sound mind and body moving forward, you're moving forward on the basis that you're doing this honestly, and this is honest work. This is something that you are not harming nobody else in doing. So your resolution must be met with a very peaceful solution. You have to exhaust all peaceful solutions around you first. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a matter of weighing in integrity. It's a matter of weighing in your interpretations. It's a matter of weighing in your knowledges and experiences at that point. But it has to be done without any biasness, which means you can't omit things that you are also responsible for. You know what I mean? You have to always be able to live with what actions that you do. You know what I mean? Truthfully live with them. You know, because if you start carrying weight with you, you're still holding on to that in the back of your head. You're always worried about what's going to happen with this, and this. You see what I'm saying? That's that fear and attachment. And that's what creates that divided thinking. It creates that splinter. And that's where the Diamond Sutra's intention was to fine tune that. So you understand when it's coming. It's supposed to help your brain. It's supposed to help your brain begin to start developing a stronger peripheral thinking. If something doesn't work, it starts trying to restructure what can work to make basically application of what your experiences are. You're going to use your experiences on that point to begin to develop a solution in your own form. Okay. You see what I'm saying? But it will still apply to the same thing that was done hundreds of thousand years ago with everybody else who applied it. You see what I'm saying? It will be measured irregardless of what's going on, because that goes also into conditioning existence. You see what I'm saying? Your karma will begin to start telling you exactly how well you're doing and how well you're going. You know what I mean? You won't have to worry about everything else around you.
Right. I mean, this is I think that this talks a little bit more to, like, if we wrap it into some of these other packages that we're seeing around here these days, that once we're doing things of service, we're doing them for the right reasons,
right.
And even if, like, I mean, our most of us, myself included, we primarily go do a lot of things, and we're going and we're doing them for money or something like that. But sometimes the money is not, and this is just kind of spitballing it. If the money's not there, like, right away, as long as we keep moving with the right intention, as long as we're doing things the right way, as long as we're doing things that are of service and provision, best use of our wisdom for the community, and not just ourselves, without attachment to these results.
Right. It's like multi-million-dollar businesses, right? You have a multi-million-dollar business or something, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and you are going to do that. Now, you are also weighing the other fact that you have to be able to continue what you're doing as far as investing in yourself in order to be able to do that. And that's what the balance is at that point. You see what I'm saying? There has to be a balance. And once that balance is achieved, which is that understanding that, okay, there are things I can't control. There are things that I can. I will control the things that I can to the best of my honest ability. And I will not let my own ego get in the way of those things. If I know I need help, I will go get the help, but I will use every bit of help that I get to the best of my ability, because I'm going to continue to go forward. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
People around me, I will do my best to benefit them and enrich their lives. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
We build. You start building and investing into your sangha. That's the reason why things like trees and plants and stuff are used, because they also root. The roots actually hold the dirt together, and it keeps the grass growing and all of that. It becomes a balancing ecosystem. Right. And that's what you do in the sangha. You build those strong ecosystems, and when they begin to start putting together, all those energies and focuses begin to start putting together, it begins to start cleaning, it begins to start removing itself. All the bad stuff just starts fading. Because when you start doing that stuff, that's where it's at, which is the reason why I believe that a lot of things that happen start with the communities. And if you invest in there first, that will be the best thing that you can do, because at least you know your community. This is a safety. You see what I'm saying? This is we are all together, and no harm will come to people here. You know what I mean?
Right.
We will not harm each other. And then once you do that, then you've done everything that you can do at that point, and you can keep it. You see what I'm saying? It's building. You know what I mean? It's called building, and that's what we have to do. We have to start building
cultivation. Cultivation.
There we go. That word. Yeah.
Cultivation. Awesome. No, that makes perfect sense. And then I just want to we'll tackle the rafting one more time, and then we'll let it go for today. If anybody else, has any questions for Sam, please, don't hesitate to post them. Hit like a replay, hit I'm here, give us some thumbs up, give us some hearts, let us know that you're here. Again, we're just doing this. I'm trying to learn. Sam's been generous enough to share his time, and we are trying to share with the community, as it were, kind of like what we're speaking about here. I think that this really gives an opportunity for people to just see how it works in essence. So he talks about the concept of the raft, right? Once the river has been crossed over, the raft is no more use and should be discarded. To me, that I think of that often. I hear that, and Alan Watts talks about that a lot in this concept, where you use the raft for a form of travel or for as long as you need it, right? And then you leave it there for either for yourself to get back if you need to, or for somebody else who needs to use it, because it has served its purpose.
Exactly. It's like a vehicle, right? People invest in their vehicles, right? And if you invest in your vehicle, even after you're done financing it, can always, last, and it will be with you a long time if you do the right thing with it, right? But when it's finally time for something to go, you let it go.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? When
Yeah.
it's time for that thing to go, when it comes to its end, so to speak, because everything changes. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Everything will change. Like, you don't keep the same car you had when you were 16. You eventually get a new one, you know?
Right.
And that's the thing. That's what that boils down to. And that's part of, like, once it is no longer needed to carry, don't carry it anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And I think that it's just also tying in just basically with like arbitrary conceptions. Like, you devise a concept on your very own, so that you can apply it in a number of
Right.
places. But once you realize that conception is no longer, first of all, you realize that you
Right.
have created that conception. You have created that model. Once you realize that model is no longer serving you, or it has served its purpose,
Yeah.
then you let it go. Is that?
Yeah. But the thing is that when you believe and it's looked like this, and I put this into life, and I put this into everything around it, and the reason why is because the positive energy that most people look at, and this is more of the a metaphysical form of it, the way people interpret it, the positive energy that goes out into a lot of things, right? It will still continue to move forward. The vessel in which it carried it through will not. You see what I'm saying? It will go. You see what I'm saying? That's what it boils down to. Nothing is permanent. You're not permanent. I'm not permanent. We're all going to pass away at one point. We're all going to move on. It is what we do while we are here that is important. The quality of what we do when we are here. And that is a part of what we have to do as far as people who lead sanghas, who are in those positions. We understand that we are simply just other people, but we're in a position where people do respect us, and we must move forward. You know what I mean? And moving forward also means in your community, around people around you. You know what I mean? You've got to, that's where you start. And that's that's basically the concept there, plus or minus.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. No, mostly 98%. And I think that'll get me there.
Yeah. It basically just, you know what I'm saying? It's make the best judgment that you honestly can.
Right. No, and I appreciate that. Absolutely. So make the best judgment you honestly can. But I also enjoy the part, like, once you become kind of a leader of a sangha, like, you don't stop there. Right.
Right.
You don't, I think that if you find that people are respecting you and what it is that you're doing, because you're bringing your best and you're doing your best, you kind of owe it almost to yourself to continue to do so. Is that right?
It's doing the right thing regardless of where it is and what the circumstances are. If other people are moving forward, best way I can tell you is just like when Jesus Christ was told, "I want to be your disciple," and he told that I guess that one lady, I can't remember her name in the Bible, but it escapes me right now. But she said she wanted to be one of his disciples, and he said to her, anyone who follows my word and puts my word into action is my disciple. Anybody who continues my word is my disciple. So that's basically what it is. You don't have to be ordained by someone to ordained by, you see what I'm saying? You don't need to be, you need to empower you to do the good things. You know what I mean? Right. You need to empower you to do what is right, what is correct, what is proper. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't need somebody. That's funny that you bring that up. I mean, when I began the podcast, Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, and when I began the fatherhood coaching, I asked my coach, I said, what gives me the audacity to take this forward? And he goes, you do. I was like, well, all right. You know what I mean? And in that, it's just like, if you don't if you don't empower yourself to do something, you can't really look to somebody else to empower you to do it, because it's within your own will to move it forward. And if you're waiting for somebody else to give you permission to do what you know is right, you're
gonna be waiting a long time.
That, and you're only harming those who are waiting on you.
Yep.
Woo! Always fun, man. Always fun. Yep. Well, Sam, thanks again for our Buddhism lunch and learn, right? So we are working through the Diamond Sutras, guys. Anybody who has some other questions for Sam, for myself, as it relates to Buddhism, ask Sam. I'm sure he'll be happy to give you a response from his perspective of his knowledge.
Yes.
And as it relates to the Diamond Sutra, if you guys get ahead of us and have some questions, and feel free to join the next one. It'll be next week at a lunchtime. I'm not exactly sure which day just yet, but we'll hop on again, and we'll create an event. So look for that. And Sam, thanks again, man. Always awesome.
problem.
Always illuminating, and I appreciate that.
All righty. Well, you take care, man. I'm happy to hear from you. I really am too. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely, bro. Thank you.
All right.